Okay, so we're in agreement we're not going to talk about this part of my face, right? Great. Okay, on with the show. Hey everybody, it's Emma from Beanbag Books. I know it's been a minute. I've been pretty busy with school and, trying to graduate and survive and whatnot. It's fine. A while ago, I ranked all the finalists for the Women's Prize, and I had so much fun with that I decided to do it with the Hugo Awards, which is an award given to fantasy and science fiction books. But I'm a little bit short on time, and you probably are too, so new plan. We're going to do this really, really fast. Go. Background on the Hugos. The Hugos are actually selected by readers. They're selected by people who attend the World Science Fiction Convention rather than a panel of judges, the way the Women's Prize does it. So they're voted on a little bit differently. There are people who vote on a bunch of semifinalists, and then from those semifinalists, 6 finalists are selected, and then the winner will be one of those finalists. They also do ranked choice voting, so the winner isn't the thing that has the most number 1 votes. It can be something that has less number 1 votes, but a lot of number 2 votes because those things are combined. The best novel category, which is the one that I read, fantasy, horror, and sci-fi novels are all eligible for the best novel category. There are always 6 finalists. So first off, I'm going to tell you the finalists in alphabetical order just so nobody thinks that I am being biased in any way in the order that I read them off. Piranesi by Susanna Clarke, The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin, The Relentless Moon by Mary Robinette Kowal, Harrow the Ninth by Tamsyn Muir, I think. If you've seen my July wrap-up, you know that I struggle with pronouncing this name because I can't find her pronouncing it, so if you know the correct pronunciation, please comment below. Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse, and Network Effect by Martha Wells. A couple of explanations before we begin. First off, if you are a savvier SF reader than I am, you may have noticed that a lot of these books are the latest installment in a series and not the first one. If that is the case, I hadn't read the first one, so rather than try to read every installment in every series and make myself super stressed out, I decided to just read the first book in the series and use that to judge whether or not I might like the one that's actually a finalist this year. Also, I always give myself one DNF. There's one book that I'm not allowed to finish on these lists, and if that happens, it's often nothing personal. I probably wouldn't have hated the book if I had kept reading it. It was just kind of slow for me. It was the wrong time. I had a lot of other books to read, etc. And that doesn't mean that that book is in last place. It just means that it's out of the ranking. It's disqualified. And in this case, that book is, drumroll, The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. I'm upset about this. I really didn't want this to be the one that I DNF'd. I was really excited to read N.K. Jemisin for the first time. I had never read anything by her, and I can say that she's a very good writer and she's inventive. The premise of this book, which is the first in what I think is going to be a series, is that every large renowned city in the world has people in the city who come to become sort of its avatars. They're imbued with the spirit of the city, and it's their duty to protect it. New York has just gotten its sort of avatar, but it also has 5 sub-avatars for each of the 5 boroughs. So the book is about all of these people discovering who they are and banding together to fight for a common purpose, which is the defense of New York City against these sort of Lovecraftian alien villains. Like I said, there was a lot I liked about this book. The writing, I thought, was pretty sharp, descriptive. I enjoyed the writing. Some of the characters were interesting. I really liked the premise, but for some reason the plot just took a really long time to take off. The characters spend so much time split apart from each other, and it felt like they were just never going to get together. And then when they did, it just felt like they were just sort of stumbling around, and I didn't have a lot of patience for that. I also felt that at times N.K. Jemisin was sort of losing sight of the actual plot of the story and was instead just trying to tell us about New York City and what it's like, and the kind of people that live there, and the kind of issues that it faces, and those things are really important. But at times I felt that they overtook the actual story rather than being integrated into it in a way that made sense with the book that she was trying to write. So for those reasons, I decided to put it down. Nothing personal. I would like to read more books by her in the future, but that one, let's put that one aside and get to the actual ranking. Number 5. I'm gonna get some hate for this one. All Systems Red by Martha Wells. This is the first book in the Murderbot Diaries. Number 5, Network Effect, is the only full-length novel. The others are novellas, and it's nominated in the novel category this year. And I decided to try this first one to see what I thought of it, and for something that seems to be so universally beloved, I kind of didn't get it. If you don't know anything about these books, the main premise is that they're about this robot named Murderbot who's designed to kill, but they really don't want to. They kind of just want to sit on their butt and watch TV. And The concept of a robot that's built to kill but doesn't really want to is in fact fun, but I feel like people just get really excited about relating to someone who just wants to watch TV all day. I feel like if that's the only thing a story is going for it, which in this case it kind of is, then maybe you don't have the best book on your hands. I thought Murderbot's a cute character and the writing was like fine and everything, but no other character was interesting or compelling at all. The story, I couldn't figure out what the story actually was. They were fighting something, but I don't really know what they were fighting or what the stakes were, who was good or bad or in the middle. I don't have much idea of the setting. I think that the book is kind of written for people who already have a fairly solid grounding of sci-fi knowledge, and I am a far below a sci-fi novice. I barely rate on the sci-fi experience scale. So yeah, the book was just too short for me to care about any of these things. It's probably, I don't know, I read an ebook. It's probably barely 150 pages. I'm glad lots of people liked it. It wasn't really my thing. 2 stars. It's also worth noting that Network Effect, which is the book that's up for the Hugo Award, has already won the Nebula Award, which is a different sci-fi fantasy award. So it's entirely possible that I just don't know anything and should never read a book again. Number 4, this one I also might get some hate for, but I think there is also a camp of people who are sort of in my boat about it, pardon the mixing of metaphors, and that is Gideon the Ninth. Harrow the Ninth, which is the second book in the series, is the one that's up for this award, but I decided to read Gideon the Ninth because it's the first one and I hadn't, and it looked interesting. And it was interesting. It was almost too interesting, but simultaneously not interesting enough, if you get my drift. I don't think I get my drift. Let me just keep talking. So the thing about Gideon the Ninth is it's a mishmash of a bunch of different genres that I wouldn't have thought to put together, but they kind of work, I guess. So the premise of the book is like, it's set in space. It's set in a futuristic society that's in space, and they're necromancers, so that's sort of a fantasy element mixed with a sci-fi element. Gideon, the protagonist, is a cavalier, which means it's her job to protect her house's necromancer. This place is divided into like 9 houses that live on different planets, and they all gather to the first house in order to have a competition to see who's going to be the supreme overlord or something. I don't really remember. There was a lot in this book. There's sort of this element of competition, but then also there's like a murder mystery because somebody dies. It's just so many things at the same time. There's also randomly like a bunch of meme type 2017 slang. Gideon says that's what she said several times, even though this book takes place in, I don't know, 20,000 or something. I could see how that could throw people off. I thought it was kind of fun, but the mishmash of everything just didn't really work for me. I was lost throughout the story. I felt like we spent way too much time trying to figure out where everybody was and who the killer was, and it was just kind of slow. And from what I've seen, a lot of other people think this is also a bit too much. So I think I'm in good company here. I give the author credit for trying to do all of these things at the same time, and I think that she does, create something pretty original. But in the end, just wasn't my thing. 2.5 stars. It was like, meh, it was all right. Okay, so the top 3 are all books that I truly do like and I would be quite happy to see win. So we're out of Negative Nelly territory here for now. Coming in at number 3 is The Calculating Stars by Mary Robinette Kowal. It's the first book in the Lady Astronaut series, and the third book is the one that's up for the award this year. I was actually really surprised by how much I liked this one. It's about a Jewish woman pilot and math whiz in the 1950s in this alternate history in which Washington, D.C. is completely obliterated by a meteorite. And the after effects of that meteorite in the atmosphere cause the planet to die much faster than it already is, I guess. And so people are trying to figure out how to colonize space so that they can continue their lives. And the protagonist really wants to be part of this effort to colonize space, and she thinks that she's very well qualified for that, but she's like a woman, and it's the 50s, and the science men don't like it. It threatens their masculinity. There's really not a whole lot of science fiction in this book. It's mostly set up for later volumes in the series where I think that there is more once they actually get into space. But I think that might be kind of why I liked it, because it's more historical fiction than science fiction. I think that it does a really good job of showing the difficulties the protagonist faces as a Jewish woman who is in STEM, but also recognizing that compared to Black women and Asian women, she actually has it like fairly easy, although her situation still isn't great. Also, the story is so well researched that it's really hard to believe that the author doesn't have a background in STEM or rocket science. In her acknowledgement, she talks about all the people she talked to help make this book possible, and the list is so long, and it totally paid off. However, it's not so much information that you're overwhelmed. I think the author did a really good job of balancing that. I didn't love everything in the book. I felt that sometimes the writing was a little bit cheesy, and I also felt that a few villains were like cartoonishly bad just for the sake of the plot. But I was honestly really into these characters and this situation, and I am really looking forward to the rest of the series. 4 stars. Okay, so number 1 and number 2, if you've watched other videos on my channel, you probably should not be surprised by these. Number 2 is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. I've talked about Piranesi several times. I think that it's really unassumingly brilliant. The beginning is a bit slow. I was a little bit frustrated with how plotting the pace was, but if you stay with it, it just gets so exponentially better. It gets better the more you think about it, really, even after you finish it. Basically, it's about this guy, Piranesi. It's not his real name. He doesn't remember what it is, but he lives in this place that he calls the house. It's a huge mansion, like as big as a country or something. Parts of it are flooded. There doesn't seem to be any other human there, although he's found human remains. And there are all of these statues of humans and also of magical creatures that seem so real that they should be breathing, but they don't. Piranesi loves the house, he loves the statues, he's very dedicated to taking care of it. But there's another human that sometimes comes to visit the house who wants to use it and Piranesi for his own means. This book is really cool because I think it takes on a lot of weighty topics about belief systems and about human nature without getting too bogged down in it that it takes away from the actual plot. It doesn't feel like this is just like some clumsy allegory that's only valuable because of the message, which is nice. The characters are memorable and they're interesting even if they only appear briefly, and if you're not Piranesi, chances are they only appear briefly. Susanna Clarke wrote Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, which won the Hugo several years ago, and she has this very, like, kind of Dickensian writing style. It's really gorgeous to read, just some of her descriptions, but it's also very modern and accessible at the same time. I have no idea how she does that. It's getting 4.5 and not 5 because it is slow to start out. Piranesi takes a really long time to figure things out that the reader already knows, and it makes sense why it takes him so long, but I don't know. I was a little bit bored, so 4.5, but that's still really good for me. And that only leaves one book, doesn't it? And like I said, if you've watched my channel, you should already know what it is, Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. I read this book at the beginning of 2021. I listened to it on audio, and suffice it to say it hit me like a truck. Like, I was expecting it to be good, but I was not expecting this high level of just everything. The world building is so original and clever. It's based on indigenous societies, and it really seems like this world exists somewhere. There's so many small details that about what they wear, about the ceremonies that they have, about their cities, and at the beginning of each chapter there's even a quote from like a famous text from the world that really helps enhance the verisimilitude, I guess. The writing is powerful, the characters are so layered and so complex and so amazing. The story is maybe, I guess if you cared about such things, you could potentially say that the story is a little bit clunky in places. I can understand that. It's this guy trying to avenge a wrong done to his people many centuries ago by becoming the vessel for the crow god, and that sets off a huge domino effect of like all of these other societies in this world that are going through turmoil. It's amazing and it took my breath away, and you should read it. I don't know what else I can say. I have regurgitated this so many times at this point. Okay, so now you know what book I want to win the Hugo Awards. What book do you think is actually going to win? Let's think about this. So these books are voted upon by readers, so the normal argument of, oh, this book has already won a major award this year, it probably isn't going to win another one, might not necessarily stand. So that means Piranesi, which won the Women's Prize already, is still in the running, which I'm very happy about personally. I think my guess is going to be that it's either going to be Network Effect or I guess Piranesi, because Piranesi has gotten a lot of buzz, and I know that Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell was such a beloved book, and it's Susanna Clarke's first book since then, which is been, I don't know, like 15 years. I think she released a collection of short stories in between now and then, but like it's still a pretty significant break. The Hugo Awards are going to be announced in, I don't know, like December, so I'll come back then and see whether I was right or not. Which book do you think should win? Let me know in the comments. Is there a book that isn't a finalist that you think should be a finalist? Also let me know that too. Thanks as always for watching. If you're actually watching, maybe you're not, maybe I'm talking to no one. So if I am talking to no one, I still hope you have a good day. Bye.